How can Chinese brands crack the code of the European EV market? Which carmakers from the country recently made headlines? And a behind-the-wheel insight into one of these new arrivals. This is the Automotive Update, presented by Autovista 24. I'm Tom Geggus, Autovista 24's editor, here with the latest edition of the Automotive Update. I'm going to take you through the last 7 days of automotive news, so let's get right into it. This week, Autovista Group held its latest online webinar. The title? Cracking the Code, Chinese EV Brands Entering Europe. We had an excellent two-person panel, Autovista Group's Director of Business Development, Christoph Ruland, and Autovista Group's Director of Valuations, Christian Schneider, who joins us now. Hi, Christian.
Hey, Tom. Great to be with you again today.
Now, for those who didn't attend, first of all, I think you and Christoph did just a fantastic job presenting so much information in such a short amount of time. But perhaps for those people who weren't able to make it, could you give us a really quick whistle-stop tour of all the topics we covered?
So, first of all, I would like to say that I think it was not only interesting content maybe for the audience, also for us to just get that stuff together. It was quite nice and quite insightful. And we basically covered in the webinar a strategic and economic backdrop of what is going on in Europe at the moment. Then we moved over to what can we see at the moment on the new car market, what is happening with Chinese new entries into Europe on the new car market, but how does it look like on the used car market at the moment as well? And in our last part, Christoph was covering what is working for Chinese brands already at the moment and what they could maybe do a little bit better going forward.
One of the main points that you focused on was the need to recognise that Europe isn't just a singular market. We talk about entering Europe, but of course, it's a collection of very varied locations, and each country has its own demands and influences. Maybe you could just talk a bit more to that point.
Yes, you're absolutely right. One of the biggest issues when new brands want to enter Europe is to understand that there is not one Europe. So all countries have different preferences, different development stages in terms of electrification. So it's quite important to understand this. And if you look on electrification, for example, across Europe, we see quite different patterns between more northern countries like Norway and Sweden and southern countries like Italy and Spain, but also Poland, for example, as an eastern country, who have quite low electrification levels, while the richer northern countries show a higher level. But not only in terms of electrification, it maybe makes sense to differentiate also in terms of how the new entries at the moment are successful. So we see that in Poland, for example, Chinese OEMs reach a 31% share of the total BEV market at the moment. While in other countries with a very strong domestic car industry like Germany and France, we see that Chinese brands at the moment have a share of roughly 5% of the total BEV market.
And you spoke in the webinar about that divide between some northern markets like France and Germany, and there being a lot more market entry for Chinese brands in the southeast, for example. What do you think it will take for Chinese brands to break through that divide and succeed in markets like Germany, for example?
I think it is really important to have a clear USP and strong brand image. So a lot of the cars that we see from Chinese OEMs coming to Europe, they are great products. I mean, they are really competitive products. So it's quite important to get very high on the shopping list of a typical car buyer. And for that, you need to have a strong USP that is convincing the buyer. I mean, first of all, to buy a Chinese model and not a European model that they traditionally buy. And then also to differentiate between quite a lot of new Chinese players at the moment coming to the market. So why should someone buy Chinese brand A and not Chinese brand B? So to really stand out here, this is super crucial. And it will take time to build that, of course. Yeah.
Now, we're talking here predominantly about the new car market, but it's only fair that we also cover the used car market. How can these brands look to preserve residual values while also making gains in registrations?
So, yeah, Tom, I think that's quite an important question as well, because just because you are successful on the new car market doesn't automatically mean that you will have very strong residual values on the used car market because, and for that, it is not too different, I would say, for new entries into the market compared to what also brands with a longer history in the market should do to have a good residual value level. So, push and any kind of incentivization or, again, pushing into bad channels is never good for the residual values. And maybe there is a slightly higher risk if you want to enter a new market that you go into RV harming push activities because your first target maybe first of all is to gain significant market share on the new car market, to get a foot into the door. And sometimes you have to achieve that with a lot of more rentals, more demos, more incentivization via cash, but also maybe via leasing rates. And this is a risk that we see. And if you can manage that to adapt your supply to a natural demand in the market and don't, again, push too much, of course, this would help a lot for those new entries as well.
Now, if there's only one other thing that you think brands should take away from this webinar, Christian, what would it be?
It is definitely, I think, also the last section from Christoph. So we were speaking a lot about what is going right at the moment and what brands could do to improve. And if I have to pick, I would say two things maybe which is going well is, I think, outstanding is that the development cycles of a lot of Chinese manufacturers are extremely short. So they are so much shorter than of most European car manufacturers, and they are improving even. So what Christoph was speaking about in the webinar. And I think besides the whole USP topic that we covered a second ago, what is also important as a takeaway is that a strong dealer network to bring your models into the market, but also for all of the after sales and services that need to be done for the used car buyers afterwards is also very, very crucial if you want to go into Europe.
Fantastic. Christian, thank you so much for taking the time today. Now, if you did miss the webinar or you just fancy watching it all over again, then head over to Autovista 24 for the recording. And our next webinar is going to take place on the 14th of October. It's entitled The Road Ahead, Residual Value Trends and the Next Market Shifts. So register right now. And to get all of our news right to your inbox, just sign up to our email. It's as easy as going to our homepage and scrolling to the sign up form at the bottom. Check out Autovista 24's YouTube channel as well. There you'll find our What Is Explainer videos, Launchport series, and webinar recordings. And of course, subscribe to the Autovista 24 podcast wherever you listen to us. In related news, several Chinese marques made news headlines in Europe this week. J-Tour, a brand from Chery, will sell 3 internal combustion engine models in Poland from November, according to Reuters. This includes the X70, the Dashing, and the T2. The brand aims to have 30 dealerships across the country by mid-2026. Leapmotor will build cars in Spain from next year as well, Autocar reports. Alongside this, the carmaker is expected to launch 2 more Europe-friendly models. And Changan has launched sales of its Deepal S07 in the UK, AM Online reports. It will initially be sold through 20 dealerships, with plans to expand to 50 locations by the end of the year. Joining me to discuss the model is special content editor Phil Curry. Phil, you recently drove the Deepal S07, so what did you make of it?
Well, it's got a very premium feel in the cabin. It's very spacious as well. There's plenty of room for front and rear occupants, and a very light interior too, thanks to a panoramic roof. The dashboard is clutter-free with a 15.6-inch screen that can swivel between passenger and driver if required. But all the controls are integrated into this screen, which could make it distracting to use. There's also no information screen behind the steering wheel, with the driving information provided via a head-up display. Now that's not a bad thing, and it does add to the premium nature of the vehicle.
And Changan have introduced something different with this model as well, haven't they?
They have. It's got some interesting technology. The car features a camera inside that can allow it to respond to driver gestures, such as answering a phone call and even taking a selfie. That makes it feel like a really family-orientated car. Rear seat passengers even get their own controls for the roof sunblind, as well as a touchscreen for climate control, drinks holders and phone stands. There's also Deepal, a voice assistant on board, which will read out warnings and respond to queries.
And so, a question I think many car enthusiasts will be wanting to hear, what's it like to drive?
Now, the drive is okay. The steering feels very precise, while the suspension is soft enough to soak up the various road imperfections at lower speeds, but strong enough to prevent lean in the corners. It can feel a bit fidgety at higher speeds though. Overall, this is a car built for family experience and designed for those who prefer the clutter-free lifestyle. Its price point is attractive for the premium feel you get when you're sitting in it, so overall it makes a really interesting addition to the expanding number of Chinese models entering Europe.
Now, if this has piqued your interest around model analysis, then head over to Autovista 24 to check out our launch report series, the most recent of which analysed the Fiat Grande Panda. A big thank you to Christian Schneider, Director of Valuations at Autovista Group, and Autovista 24 Special Content Editor Phil Curry for appearing in this episode. And additional thanks go to Autovista 24 Web Editor James Roberts. The music was Better Find a Solution Fast by Richard Ames. Thank you very much for listening to the Autovista 24 podcast.